Okay, it is 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. And our first order of business is, one, a reminder. If you have cell phones or electronic devices with you, please turn them off or in airplane mode so they do not disrupt the meeting. For those of the students that are here this evening from Mound West Tonka, thank you for joining us and welcome. It probably will be a shorter meeting than usual, so you're in luck, but stay for the whole thing. And with that, would you also please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So again, welcome everyone. I'm going to make a few introductions first, and then we'll get on with our agenda. I'm Lisa Whalen, I'm the mayor, and to my left are council members Pam Mortenson, Mike Molitor, John Tschumperlin, Shannon Bruce, and on the end we have our city engineer with WSB, Alyson Fauske, and our city clerk is Kris Linquist, and then on the end our director of administration is Cassandra Tabor, and then sitting behind Cassandra this evening is our public works superintendent, Gary Peters, and then to my right I have our city administrator, Mike Barone, Brian Grimm is our finance director, David Abel is our community development director, and then next to David we have Mr. Ron Batty with Kennedy and Graven, who is our attorney, and then next to him, our Chief of Police, Paul Falls. So with that, is there any additions or changes to the agenda? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion has been made by Ms. Mortenson and seconded by Mr. Tschumperlin. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. So first we have two special presentations. One is the S.E.H. S.E.H. is with us this evening. I should say a representative from S.E.H., Chad Katzenberger, and a water tower update. So Mr. Katzenberger, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Greetings, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to be here tonight and just share with you a brief update on the progress we've been making on the water tower project, primarily from a design perspective. So since the last time you probably saw us, we made quite a bit of progress. Our surveyors have been out there gathering topographic data. Site plans been developed. We've been working with our design team in developing a plan. We've had some internal meetings with city staff to review the design and the various features of the site, as well as the tower itself. We're on track as planned for our anticipated schedule. So right now we're shooting to have our basically 60% plan and spec packet complete by the end of this month, which we'll forward on to the city for review, for city staff to provide comment. From there, we'll be moving into the month of November to finalize our plans and specifications. So Mike's put the schedule up on the screen there. Again, we're shooting to have plans and specs ready to go and approved at your December City Council meeting. That would put us on track for bidding in January. We're shooting for a bid date towards the end of January, get through the holidays, let contractors pay close attention and submit their bids by the end of, on a bid date at the end of January. That's the current goal. That would, again, put us on track for construction to kick off in the 2020 construction season, and then finish up in the spring and summer of 2021 to accommodate the painting of the tank, so on and so forth.
Is that a really good bid time?
Yeah, we found it's early in the season. Really, water towers can be bid basically any time of the year, but that's the time of the year where there's fewer projects happening and potentially they can be paying attention, ready to kind of schedule their plan period on out. So,
okay.
The other thing we've got going for us is just the timeline and the schedule allowing 2 construction seasons, which is typical for a water tower, will lend itself to more favorable prices as well.
Okay.
So I think updated schedule is provided to everyone. We're on track to what we previously have done. We're basing our design on a 500,000 gallon tank, composite style tank. There's just a first shot of what that tank might look like, the composite style tank. The benefit of it is the column portion of it is concrete, so it doesn't require any sort of paint or coatings, so that both reduces your initial coating costs as well as your long-term maintenance costs when it comes to paint, because that's the primary piece on your steel tank portion that protects the steel from the weather as well as from the interior water. So presenting just kind of an initial design with the city logo, 2 logo placements so you can see it on either side coming from either direction on the highway, with a color scheme to potentially match your city logo.
I'm going to make one comment.
Okay.
So with a water tower, we really don't want it to like be too flashy because a lot of people don't like the looks of them. So I would eliminate some of the colors on that. I like the logo part, but I think you can go with less blue and green. I mean,
if we're going to comment on that,
Yeah.
I would like to add that I would actually prefer removing the logo entirely, just because I can see future councils at some point deciding that, hey, we need to change our logo, and now we've got it pasted on a water tower that's a little more expensive to change than a piece of paper on stationery. So if I can't even remember how our current ones are.
I think none of them have anything on them.
Yeah, and so I just might be better not to do that.
And while we're commenting on the water tower painting, the maintenance on these water towers repainting is
that's what
very
I was.
expensive.
That's what I was
And
thinking too.
I think the less, the better. I'd get rid of the logo. I'd maybe put Minnetrista on there, but I'd suggest keeping it minimal, very minimal.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. So again, less is better.
I guess that's kind of another reason we
Yeah.
started with an option was just to get the discussion going.
Yeah.
And see
It's
where
pretty.
you guys want
It's pretty.
Just out of curiosity, how much does it cost to paint? I know it would be an estimate. Because of that concrete, saving a lot of money, do you have an idea how much it would save to paint that smaller portion then? Because we're looking at painting some right now, and it's very expensive.
Correct, yeah.
So how much are we saving by doing that type of a...
It's up to, in terms of just total surface area of the tank, going from that style to an all-steel tank, it's about half.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
So
Okay.
in terms of surface area. Now,
We're talking long term though,
Right.
and
Right.
also
Long-term.
initial cost.
initial cost for the paint itself. Now, the thing that they share is the interior paint of the tank is the most important, and regardless of
What you do? Yeah.
one style or the other, that's still
Yeah.
going to be a piece that's maintained. in the
All
end.
right.
So.
Okay.
All right. So you understand what we want?
I think so. Simplify.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Kind of a cloud color. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay.
So I guess with that we'll continue on. This was again just included to get the discussion going, and we can change that as needed and gain consensus from the city on that. So. With that, we're going to continue on with our process. We'll be submitting our 60% plans and specs for review and comment, and then follow that up with a meeting with city staff to address any of those comments, tie up any loose ends, and then presuming that all goes as planned, we'll shoot for that same bidding schedule for seeking approval for the plans and specs at the December meeting, and then bidding in January.
So you'll be submitting the 60% to staff, or does that come back to the council?
We can certainly give it to the council as well.
Okay. So that'll come back November?
No, he said by the
I'm
end
sorry.
of the month we'll be seeing
Oh.
something.
I think that's
Okay.
what will be at the December meeting, right?
December would be the final.
Yeah, December meeting will be
60%
final.
will be
So
at the
the
end
beginning
this
of November, we'll see the 60%.
month. Sure.
Okay. All right. All right. Great. Any other questions? Good. Go forward. Thank you. All right. Nice job. So next we move on to our third quarter financial update. Mr. Grimm.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, and I think I have a good news or on track news or however you want to call it, but it is nothing shocking. So I'll probably make this brief, but just if you have any questions after my brief statements, feel free to ask. So on page 3 in your packet is the memo that outlines, and just for the highlights, revenues are at about 64% of overall total budget, and that's basically about the same point we were at this point of time in September of, I guess, 2018. That has to do with the fact that, and maybe if we look at page 4, that we only have gotten 50% of our tax, property tax, because we get that twice a year in June, July, and November, December time frame. Building permits, we are doing well. We've basically through the end of September, we are almost at our amount we budgeted for the full year. We're at 96%. They're $586,000 out of $609,000, and I think that's been trending that way for pretty much first, second, third quarter now, just with our number of permits, I think, being up in the over 100 for the year now.
They are this so far over 100?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we
So
are.
as of end of September?
Yep, as of end of September. Yep, we're over 100 permits that we've had for the year of new homes or new construction. So that's a good thing, and that should hopefully help give us a little positive variance for revenues when all is said and done at the end of 2019. As far as expenditures, we basically are at about 75% through September of 2019, which is basically, again, where you think you'd be for this time of year, as well as very similar to last year. So I think everything's going well there. And I, just when I even looked through the report again this morning, that's on pages 5 through 9 of your packet. Everything seems to be tracking well in that upper 60s to low 70s range for most departments. Some things we've paid the full year already, whether it's the fire service, Hennepin County assessors, etc. So when all that's factored in, I think we're sitting at a point where we should projected to be at or a little under budget on our expenditures once we get to year end, would be my prediction there. And then just the last thing for the report is the cash and investments by fund on page 10, and I think everything is tracking pretty well there. Probably the main points I'll make there is there's a couple funds with negative balances. The capital improvement equipment fund, that we're looking at doing an equipment certificate in early 2020, so that should rectify that deficit there. A couple other debt funds just have timing differences until we get our taxes. Final tax payment in December, so that's where those couple other funds have those minor deficits. And then funds 530 and 531, the roundabout and Kings Point Road fund, those we had the prepaid special assessments in. We just haven't made the payment. Those are being called at the end of October here for November 1st. So you'll see the money in 530 and 531 basically go away here for once you see the fourth quarter report, because those will be paid off to pay off the bonds. So,
right.
Otherwise, if any council has any questions, I'll stand for those. But I think pretty much we're looking about where we should be at this time of year. So.
Yeah, we had a discussion at our work session regarding some of our fund balances. So, any other questions regarding Brian's report?
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, I had a quick question about on page 4, the drug task force, the $20,000 that's there in the budget. Does that just come in at the end of the year, or are we still getting that?
Yep, we are still getting at least. I know Chief Falls had a meeting here recently, and that's going to come right at the end of the year. It'll be like a receivable, but
okay, yes.
And was that 10? Was it going to be 20 for this year or 10,000? I know it fluctuates between depending on the activity and the drug task force. Maybe I'll just
absolutely, Madam Mayor, members of council. That amount isn't set in stone. It's just kind of an estimate that we put in there. Some years it'll meet that $20,000 threshold. Some years it'll be more. Some years it'll be less. I believe for 2019 they have said that that reimbursement will be $10,000. But there are a couple of other pending federal cases that we're getting some reimbursements from that should total approximately $7,000. And we've submitted everything we can at this point, so those are still pending. But at this point, they're planning on $10,000, and they'd like to keep 2 years of operating budget in the budget. So that's how that amount is determined.
Okay.
And then maybe somebody could explain, what is post reimbursement? What is that?
Madam Mayor, members of council, that has to do with mandatory training. So we basically submit a record of all of the training that we attend throughout the year for our entire department, and then we get a percentage of that back. And so that's where that money comes from. And that is slowly increasing because the amount of mandated training is also increasing.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions?
Yep, Brian, on page 7, there's a line item, siren and maintenance fee, or expense, I should say. Year-to-date budget, or total budget is $17,000. It looks like that's coming out of general fund. You see the line I'm talking about?
Yep.
It's count 101-4210/339. Would it be appropriate for that to come out of the siren fund rather than the general?
I can look. I know when I first got here back in 06, 07, I think it was when the capital purchases were done to put up all the different sirens around the city. I know there was some structure on whether the money to go in there was supposed to be all for capital purposes or whether, obviously it's more operation, but maybe I can take a look and see how that was defined as far as whether this could potentially come out of that special revenue fund or not, I guess. So, but I know at the
I
time...
thought it was coming out of there, but I just assumed
it's not
it
according
was.
to this.
Yeah.
No, this would be, it's coming out of the police general fund budget, so...
Paul?
Madam Mayor and members of council, I believe that there's two different issues here. One is kind of the ongoing routine maintenance, which is what comes out of the police line item budget that I think you're referring to there. And the other one is a fund that is essentially for replacement of sirens when things fail. Our sirens are relatively new, but at some point most of them were put in at the same time. So unfortunately, they're likely going to have to be replaced at the same time. And so we're kind of reserving that fund for that purpose because that day will come.
So of this approximately $10,000 spent year to date, the 98-95, was any of that maintenance including materials that would be, or is that all labor?
The vast majority of that was labor. There probably were some incidental materials, but the vast majority of that is labor.
Their inspections and stuff, right?
Yes, there are inspections, and there's some mechanical parts that have to be cleaned and lubricated and things like that, and then radio parts have to be looked at and gone through it. So the vast majority of it's labor.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Grimm. We don't have to take any action on that. So, anything else? All right. So we'll move on to persons to be heard. We do have a gentleman signed up, Tom Paluz. Okay. Please, you'll have a few minutes, 3 minutes, to address the council. We won't take action this evening, but we can decide where we want to put this. So
I'll start with an introduction. My name's Tom Paluzny. I reside at 3490 Lithram Way. I'm here with one of my neighbors, Bob and Diane Murphy. I've been a resident in Minnetrista since 2003, first residing in Sunnybrook and now on Lithram Way. For those of you that are not familiar where Lithram Way is, we're just right off County Road 44, which has been the bane of our existence for the past 2 years.
Ours too. Ours too.
But we're not here to talk about that sewer line, but rather the sewer line that runs underneath Lithram Way. This kind of started as a process, or at least an awareness, about a year ago. Our newest neighbor that just built at the end of the road on the point at Lithram Way, Tom and Heidi Knox, basically I think they came to the city. They're building a new home. They needed to connect to the sewer line. After contacting the city said, well, that's a private sewer line. And at which point they came back to the homeowners, and the builder said, we need to connect to your sewer line. And all of us were dumbstruck. We were unaware that we were the private owners of this sewer line, nor did we really were equipped to really answer what sort of connections should be made, how this is all going to work. Suffice to say, we shook our heads and said, yeah, go ahead and connect. And they got the house done. There have been wonderful people, wonderful neighbors. But we've had a number of conversations that have ensued with the city staff to the extent of, why are we the private owners of a sewer line for a road that's, called about a third mile long? And conversations have been constructive. We've been working with Adam Godboys from WSB Associates, Mr. Peters here, is in attendance. Jim Eichen, who's one of our other residents, has had most of these conversations. And the conversations kind of turned over like, well, our fees that we pay for sewer, do they not include maintenance? And they said, yeah, they do. I said, but evidently not quite our stretch of sewer line, which seemed a little odd. And I think when we first approached city staff, I think the general response was, well, this is a little unusual, which we thought kind of the same thing. And so we've had a few conversations. City staff has been very gracious in working with us through some early exploratory discussions about, well, why do we have it? Why maybe should it be part of the city? I think the city staff also took a look at scoping the line to see what sort of condition it was in, came to the general determination it was in decent shape. I think we've kind of been talking with staff, we've moved to the point of like, well, if we're going to look at this any further, we're probably at the point of needing a legal filter to run this through just to see what may or may not need to happen. Quite frankly, we're not really equipped as homeowners to really have a clear understanding as to what should be required in that sewer line and what might end up going downstream, so to speak. We feel a little helpless and unaware. City's probably in a much better position, we feel, to actually have a better understanding of what sort of requirements that should have been made with that connection that came into our sewer line. So we're here to respectfully ask that City Council support a legal review to see if this could be turned back over to the city. Okay. And be more than happy to answer whatever questions that you might have of me at this point. Yep. Not if it's about the technical specifications of a sewer line, please.
Don't know. I don't know.
Well, I guess I'll chime in and I'll ask other city staff for some help here. We're aware of the request by the homeowners. And the one thing that we came up with at a staff meeting recently was I believe this sewer was built when the development was put in. That's why it's a private sewer line. Why it was done that way, I couldn't tell you why back in the day, but that's the way it is. And so in order for us to, at the city, to essentially take over the maintenance and operation of the sewer line, there's a lot of moving parts here, both with legal work and with engineering work. And as you mentioned, I think they looked at the line, and it's in pretty decent shape. But the recommendation that I'm going to give you from our perspective is if the homeowners, which I believe they are willing to pay for the legal review and the engineering review, and it's not cheap, it's probably in the $10,000 range, essentially, to do that. And I think the assistant city engineer, Adam, talked with the homeowner, at least through your representative. I don't know if it was you directly, but they seem to indicate that they would be willing to do that in order to basically take over the maintenance and operation of the sewer lines.
Give it to the city.
By giving it to the city. We want to make sure that, they're not, there's title things and things of that nature. That's the legal part, and then the actual maintenance of the sewer line. So,
sure.
So I think that was what we asked Mr. Gadbois to express to the residents, that if they're willing to pay for the upfront legal and engineering work, that based on the council's recommendation, we would be willing, if so inclined, we'd be willing to.
Well, it just seems odd. I don't know that we have any other private sewer lines. Yeah.
This is kind of a dumb question, but are you guys a homeowners association or are you individual?
We have no formal homeowners association. There's some restrictive, basically some original covenants from 1979, which I'm assuming when
it was
built.
Yeah.
I think if it was done today, my guess is that it would be rather unusual for that same sort of arrangement to be made.
Right, but there would be assessments to homeowners as you bought your lots, et cetera, that happen now. But
typically the developer pays for that when it happens.
Correct. And it gets passed on to the homeowners.
We're kind of looking at it from the perspective of we pay the same rate that any other resident pays for basically sewer maintenance and sewer service, but we're not really getting the maintenance part of it. So how we ended up on that same rate, I guess is maybe a question that we could also come out of this whole process.
Sure.
I have a question, and it's probably a silly question too, but this private sewer line connects to the cities?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's connected?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. It's just that stretch on Lytham. way.
Do you
Yeah.
know how many parcels are involved?
6 or 7 or 8 or something like that.
Do you know how many homes?
How many homes? How many parcels of land?
We've got 4. We had 3 homes. I think we were part of the original plat. The house that I bought subdivided, and we now have 4. And that last house, again, was the house that was just built within the last year that kind of brought this issue to light. And I think our first aha moment was just that moment of like, well, they're asking us to connect to the sewer, and like, again, we're in a position of helplessness.
That's why I was asking about homeowners association, because normally when you say us, it's like, how did you end up being the leader of people?
There is this document evidently obligates. And this is a little bit of the review. There's actually I just reading layman's review of the document would suggest that yes, as homeowners, it would suggest that we're responsible for maintaining this. So if it's got to be replaced, we've got to come together to do it. But there's also a provision in that same document that the city backstops this in some ways to say if a resident is unwilling to come forward and do the right thing, the city would basically take care of it and bill it out through a lien. So hence, I won't say that there's a little bit of, it's odd.
Right. Normally, just it would seem odd, like you got picked to be the leader, I guess, or something.
Well, and there's another property owner here this evening too. So,
Sure.
yeah,
Okay.
you got 50% of the property owners here tonight. So, yeah,
I think everybody who's looked at this has gone, okay, this is unusual.
yeah,
Right.
it is.
And
I think
that's
it
kind
is.
of where we're at right now. $10,000 for legal and civil review is steep, with an uncertain outcome from our standpoint as well.
So you just want to know that the outcome might be that we would take over that sewer line if all this documentation can be taken care of.
If there was a indication that, yes, pending that review, that would be the likely outcome, I think that might be something that I think is easier for us to like
Sure.
Right.
go jump in and say, okay, we'll take care of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But without that sort of outcome, that's like we're betting on I don't know what.
Right.
So $10,000 for no.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say if it can be worked out from a legal perspective and engineering perspective, why wouldn't we take it over? I mean, we should.
Mayor and Council, we don't have any reluctance to take it over. That's not the issue. The issue is we just want to make sure that the council was okay with this request, and also with the understanding that there's legal and engineering things associated with that request.
So I think you should go ahead and do this, and then it'll come back to us. Mr. Batty, do you want to weigh in? I mean,
well, Madam Mayor, Council, I think the engineering piece is it in shape such that the city wants to take it over. I've had some preliminary conversations with the staff. I think we're sort of there. The legal piece of it really is going to be how do we get there?
Yeah.
I mean, I just learned that there was no HOA. I assumed that there was.
They could form one.
We're all good terms.
That's good.
The issue is going to be who will convey this to us. And so we need to look at some title work. We need to look at their covenants. If there's an easement to be drafted, it's the mechanics as how to get from there, where they are to here.
Given that, if we're talking about 4 homeowners here and there is no HOA, then I think that what we're all kind of maybe thinking implicitly, or at least I am, is that everyone's on board. We can't have a holdout. So if we're either all in or all it can't be like three out of the 4 say yeah, but then the 4th person goes no. Because we don't have. If we had one entity to negotiate with, then that would be different. But we've got 4.
And that is significant because, again, until 3 minutes ago, I assumed that there was an HOA and which owned the facility and would then convey it. And what I want to look at in the covenants is what kind of majority vote, simple, super majority, would it take of the HOA members to convey it? If there's no HOA, I suspect it's every property owner. And actually, I thought there were 6 lots. So
I hope not. There is an outlot for one of the homes on Hardscrabble for lake access, but they don't have any plumbing hooked up to that lot. So,
well, I think what this is demonstrating is all the details that will have to be worked out.
Right.
How many lots have an interest in this line, and then how are we going to make sure that that it gets conveyed to us. And,
Right.
and that's really the review.
And I think that
Yeah.
outline question actually could be a little bit more significant because they don't have the same stake in it that you do because they're not hooked up to it, yet they're going to have to agree to the.
Well, they may or may not, depending on.
Well, they may, right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get it. You've got 4 people, but if someone else has an interest and all of a sudden they're going to find out just like you did at some point, it's just a kind of an unknown for us. So that's why I want to kind of reiterate that everyone's on board, and because you're looking for that commitment from us, and I think we're all makes sense, but we got to make sure that everyone on the other side of this is also on board.
And I think that's easy enough for us to do. As I said,
Okay.
we're all on good terms. We've kind of been looking at this the same way, going,
Sure.
yeah,
Right.
it's working right now, but there's lots of ways that this could go sideways down
Sure.
the road.
Sure.
And I think this city is a good, honest partner
Good.
as it relates
Right.
to city sewer service that kind of makes a lot of these issues go away long term.
Right.
All right.
And to address the unanimity of it, I can't imagine why somebody wouldn't be on board.
Well, I'm just thinking the money they have to pay up front.
Oh, that, yeah.
Right. So I just.
But
so
if it's
everyone knows.
divided 4 or 6 ways, it's
Well, yeah.
not as much. So,
Right.
All
But
right.
the division of that.
Right.
If you're dividing it by 6 versus 4, just everyone's
yeah.
on board.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank
So,
you very much.
yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Okay, we have that concludes our persons to be heard. So we'll move on with our consent agenda items. They consist of approve our work session meeting minutes from October 7th, 2019. B is approve our regular meeting minutes from October 7th, 2019. C is a resolution to approve our claims. D is a resolution to accept the donation of trees from Superior Outdoor Expressions. And E is a resolution to approve additional services from Foth. This is regarding the Lotus Drive project, and this would be a pass-through. And then F is approval of our final plat known as the Casas edition. And then G is approve of proposed 2020 legal rates for our attorney. Any that you need to remove?
Yes, I'd like to remove A, the work session minutes.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, that remains B, C, D, E, F, and G as was read. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made by Ms. Bruce and seconded by Ms. Mortenson to approve consent agenda items B, C, D, E, F, and G. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Ms. Bruce?
On page 13, we have the work session minutes where we were discussing the comp plan and taking off the private well ordinance, the Green Step Cities best practices option, and the rebate program. And it doesn't, the meeting minutes don't specifically say that we're taking those off, and I would like them to say that specifically. And on page 227, table 28, there are some check boxes on that table that are populated or were populated prior to this meeting with the private well ordinance, the Green Step Cities best practice option, and the rebate program. And those check boxes need to be taken off, just as in the paragraph above that.
Ms. Bruce, maybe what you could do is speak with our city clerk and have her then come back with this, because there seems to be a lot of issues here, and for us to then go back and say, yes, we approve this or we don't, maybe it would be good to have a red line version so we can see.
And we could approve that at our next meeting. That's
right.
fine.
Yeah, I think so, because it seems like you're referencing different pages and different things.
It's
and
one
so
page. It's page 227, table 28, and the 3 check boxes of the 3 things that we agreed to take off the comp plan need those check boxes removed. The private well ordinance, the Green Step Cities option, and the rebate program.
I'm not finding it on, you said page 13?
No,
She's talking about the comp
the
plan.
comp plan.
It's
page
not in our
227.
packet, though.
No, but it's referenced in the minutes.
That's what I'm asking.
Right.
Where is it referenced in the minutes?
In the minutes, it's referenced on page 12. I gotta figure out which page 12 is.
Item 6, I believe, right?
Items 5 and 6.
I still think we need to bring it back. Because I'm not
quite following.
Yeah, I'm not following what you're saying.
Councilmember Bruce, so maybe you can call me tomorrow, and we can, or not tomorrow. Please call me on Wednesday, and
then we can bring it back at our
Okay,
October.
that's fine.
At our first meeting in November. Okay. All right. So we'll bring that back first meeting in November. Moving on then to business items. It's approve a resolution awarding the sale of general obligation refunding bonds series 2019A in the original aggregate principal amount. Now here in our packet it says $1,430,000, and it looks like it's actually going to be $1,210,000. So that's very good news. We have Rebecca Kurtz with us this evening in lieu of Todd. He's has other meetings to attend. So welcome, Ms. Kurtz.
Thank you. Rebecca Kurtz with Ellers. And Todd does send his apologies. He was double booked this evening, so you guys are stuck with me instead of Todd. But I do have good news this evening. As stated, what you have before you is to consider awarding the resolution for $1,210,000 in general obligation improvement refunding bonds. As a reminder, this issue is refunding the 2010A bonds solely for interest cost savings, and those 2010 bonds were for financing the Game Farm Road and South Bay improvement projects. As we've done in the past, we did go through the rating process prior to the sale of this, and I should back up. I believe you were handed out a sale day report with the results and all of this information in it just before the meeting today.
Yeah, we have not had a chance to review all of it, but yes.
There's a lot of information,
Right.
So I'm going to work on covering the highlights with that.
Thank
but
you.
In the report or the packet that was handed out, there is the full rating report from the review with Standard & Poor's. I would like to take a couple minutes, though, to just point out some highlights on that and some summaries.
Yep, and can I just chime in? I did email out the rating report on Friday morning, so the council did have a chance at least to read through that. But yeah, definitely go ahead and
hit the highlights. Sure.
So with that, I'd like to say congratulations. So if you've seen the report, you know that Standard & Poor's did assign the AA+ long-term rating for the 2019 bonds, and at the same time affirmed that rating for your outstanding debt and provided a stable outlook into the future. So congratulations with that. That just affirms the work that you as the council are doing and that staff is doing to maintain the finances for your city and the policies and all that goes with that for planning, not only today, but the long-term planning for the community. In the report, Standard & Poor's does support their AA+ rating with review of a very strong economy for the community and recognizes its access to the broad and diverse metropolitan statistical area of the Twin Cities. They recognize the strong management with good financial policies and practices that the city has in place, along with adequate budgetary performance, strong budgetary flexibility with the available fund balance at the end of fiscal 2018 being 56% of operating expenditures, and then also very strong liquidity. And again, there is detail on all of those points in the report, and if you do have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer the comments that Standard & Poor's have made on that.
I just have a question.
Yes.
So at the end of fiscal year 2018, it was 56% fund balance. So how much is that weighted? So if the fund balance is, let's say, at 45% or 48%, how much is that weighted towards our rating then?
With, I think the specific percent that you have does not necessarily carry a heavy portion for your rating. With that, it does fall within their overall review of having policies in place for your fund balance, and then how you are following or being in compliance with the policies that you have set. With that, one thing that Standard & Poor's did talk about, and I know they had a discussion with Todd when the rating was received, was what would it take if that fund balance was going to be higher, what would you need to maintain it at for an increase in rating? And it would Standard & Poor's would be looking at needing to have about a 78% fund balance consistently in order to bump up to a AAA rating.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
It is
the
very
fund balance
high.
is pretty high. Yeah.
Yes. And that you know, as you guys know, is significantly higher than best practices recommendations from the Government Finance Officers Association, the state. So,
yeah. Okay.
Along those same lines, where the report talks about the weak debt and contingent liability profile on page 5, how can Minnetrista make that a stronger profile? Right now, we're at 18.6%. Total government fund debt service is 18.6%. What's a number that would bump that up to be a strong debt profile?
I don't know what that number should be. I will say when you compare
or ballpark
to, probably less than 10.
Less than 10.
I will say that not that it changes the heading that is weak debt. However, it is something that is fairly common that we see for a majority of the communities across our state. And I will say from my experience at 18%, it is low compared to what we see from a lot of communities across the state. One thing that does help and is viewed as positive is that 66.5% of your debt is scheduled to be repaid within 10 years. So that is a benchmark that S&P does look at during the review process and give you credit or see as a positive credit factor that your debt that you do have outstanding is relatively short-term debt. So having the higher the amount that can be paid off in that 10 years also is viewed as a positive by Standard & Poor's.
And this also takes into account the water tower and the $2 million debt for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Which is going to be longer than 10 years.
Yes, and so, you know, that's why it recognizes the 66.5%, knowing that not all of your debt will be repaid with the 10 years, but you do have a large amount of debt that comes off in 10 years. Recognizing, though, with the way cities operate, there will be new debt coming on, and so they're ultimately recognizing relatively short and they view it as responsible amortization schedules for your debt.
So the weak debt profile, how does that affect the rating? And if that were to change to a strong debt profile, how would that affect our rating?
I think that it is fair to say there is an impact on that. What that means specifically as far as how that plays into the bigger final rating, it is a piece of it. It is not a majority piece by any means. The debt piece of it is roughly like 20%. But again, that as I say, debt piece talks about not only the outstanding debt that you have, but how quick that debt is amortized. Is it debt that is, you know, general obligation? Is it revenue? It's all of those pieces coming together.
So they take all of those, and that's part of the 20%.
Correct.
So they have a formula that they use to create that 20% of your total rating.
Yes, yes, that is correct. And so I think that reducing the amount of debt would be seen as positive, but would that alone increase
probably
or change
if
your
it's,
rating? That alone probably not is a factor that would push it to the next level.
Because the next level is AAA.
Correct.
Because we're at AA plus, so the next level is AAA. And so because it's only 20% of your total overall rating, within that 20%, if you reduce some of it, you're not gaining that much. Is what you're okay.
And really what we do see as a common factor for AAA communities is that continually high fund balance at a 75% or larger.
Then that's a
General
larger
fund.
factor. Okay.
That
Yeah.
tends to be viewed as a much more significant factor. than
Yeah, I
that.
think my time in Eden Prairie, the one thing that they essentially told each other all the time was cash is king. So you have a lot of cash, you're going to get a good rating. Because during my tenure, I had nothing to do with it. I just worked there. But we did go from a AA plus to a AAA rating at Eden Prairie. And it all had to do with how much cash we had on hand. So a large portion of it. So.
Okay.
And I think as Ms. Kurtz mentioned, the 78% is kind of nothing that we really want to be near.
Yeah.
It kind of is beyond the scope of what you should have for a result.
Right. Yeah.
I think people would balk that we're just dashing money
Right.
just to get a AAA.
Yeah. If you were doing, like, if
Oh,
you were a
for
huge
the-
city and
yeah.
you were doing lots and lots of bonds,
Projects,
maybe, but
May make
yeah.
some sense, but for us,
Yeah.
probably not.
No. Okay. But good to know. Good information. All right.
So with that, I can move on to
Yeah.
the results from today's sale. As I mentioned, they were rated the AA plus with the stable outlook. With that, we did then receive 4 bids. A detail of who the 4 bidders were and their actual bids is included in the sale day packet. But Baird out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin was the low bid with a true interest cost of 1.74%. Just as a comparison, when Todd was here about a month ago, we were estimating about 2.07%. So it was slightly better than what we had estimated. With that, we have a total savings of $86,888. And again, as a comparison, we had estimated about $50,500 for savings. So we went from an anticipated 3.4% in savings to about 5.2%. The other news, as was recognized at the beginning of the discussion, was that with the bids we received, we were able to reduce the size of the bonds by $220,000. And so that is a combination of a reduction in the cost of issuance, the underwriter's discount, and a premium bid. So the final amount that we are recommending for awarding is $1,210,000. We are looking to schedule the closing date for November 6th, so funds would be available at that point to call the 2010A bonds. And with that, we again are recommending that we award to Baird with the interest rate of 1.74% at the new amount of $1,210,000. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Question I have, if I'm understanding this presentation correctly, the coupon on these is 5% and then some longer terms at 4%. Why is it so high?
With that, I referenced that we did receive a premium bid
Right.
with this. And so with that, we see higher interest rates. It, in very simple terms, helps them with how they market it to the second market after that. So we see higher interest rates. The underwriter actually provided us more money than what was needed.
Right, I get how that works. I'm just, it actually seems like, because we compare that to some of the other stuff that we have outstanding from that same time period, the coupons in the 2 to 3%. You put this 3.27 million GO from 2010. And I understand how that works. It's a little bit deceiving, for council members. Going forward, when we look at this, whoever looks at this 10 years from now, 5 years from now, is going to see a coupon on these things for 5%, 4%, and is probably going to say, hey, we can refinance this and save money. The problem is we've already taken that savings up front by getting this discount ahead of time. So it makes for a very deceiving picture for the council going forward, because all that savings, right? Because we're going to be paying 4 and 5% on this now for the next through 2031, because we've taken all the interest savings up front, and so it would have been nice to see the coupon brought down a little bit and have the premium be a little less than $200,000, and because it would just have been a little more honest, I think. It's a short-term gain that we get now, and that's great, but we're paying the price over the next 11 years.
Or you'd be paying less, but you wouldn't get the 210,000.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's
a
little deceiving because the point being that 210,000, when somebody does an analysis 5 years from now, is going to be water on the bridge.
They won't know that.
Right.
Yeah.
All they're going to see is the rate that's being paid and going, oh, we could save money. Well, no, we already took that savings, and it's going to get forgotten. That's my concern.
And also for the detail of that, you will see in your packet there is a debt service comparison that does outline the actual annual savings is between $5,000 and $9,000 depending on the year.
And that would be the pages aren't numbered, so
I will tell you.
it says net new DS and old net DS. Is that
Yes,
that's the one
that
you're
is
talking
correct.
about? Yeah, and you're talking about savings. So the first year we're only going to save $300, and then the next year $6,000, and then $7,000, and then $9,000, and so on.
Yes, that is the page.
Per year. Okay. I think that's what a future council would be looking at is savings. But your point is made. I mean, yeah. All right. Any other comments or questions? So overall, if we refinance this, the total savings is $86,888.
That is correct.
Yeah. So, any other questions, comments? Otherwise, is there a desire to refinance these? I think for an $88,000 savings, regardless of when or how you pay the interest, that's a good deal for Minnetrista. So I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
And it would be to approve the refinancing of refinancing of our refunding bond series 2019A. In the this would then be changed to the original aggregate principal amount of 1.210, awarded to Baird Milwaukee in Wisconsin at the 1.74%. And do you need anything else with that? Okay. All right. So Ms. Mortenson made that motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. Any further questions or discussion?
Yes. I'm a little troubled that we get this much information at a council meeting when we don't have time to read it. And getting this information while we're listening to someone talk about this bond sale, this is a lot of money. And hearing the coupon rate and the concerns that Councilmember Molitor had, I think it would be nice to get information like this in advance so that we have time to peruse it before we vote on something this significant.
And I'll be happy to work with staff to do what we can. We did take bids on this morning, so there is, part of that we don't have answers or any information other than the rating report until about 10:30 this morning, and then there is a process to go through and work with the underwriters to verify the numbers, verify the calculations. So we did not have the final bid and everything settled with the underwriter until early afternoon. But we can definitely see what we can do in the future to at least get it out in the afternoon electronically.
So how long are these good for, the option?
About a day.
A day. Okay.
Yeah, this is time sensitive. If we don't act on it tonight, we'll lose it. In other words, we won't be refinancing. And so that would be my concern.
Well, and it's my concern too. I don't want to pass up an opportunity. It's just, it would be nice to get information
Sure.
sooner, and this is a lot to digest in 5 minutes
I
before we
guess
vote on
the
it.
question I would have is,
Yeah.
I know in the past we've usually gotten them always from Ehlers the Monday morning. Can we structure it? Is there any way to structure it? I guess our council packet goes out on Thursday afternoon. Is there a way to do that in the financing market to get them on Thursday where they're still held on a Monday night? I mean, basically it's what need to happen for the
Or
council
at
to
least
be able-
Friday
or
or
Friday
something. But when do they usually bid on these? Is it a Monday bid
is that-
usually?
We took bids this morning at our office at 10 o'clock this morning.
No, what I'm saying is that
for future
for
ones, like our water
future,
tower
can you
coming
do
up,
a
can
bid
we-
on Friday, or do they not hold it over that long?
If we do a competitive bid, it is not, they would not hold it over that long.
Okay.
If you wanted something where maybe they would hold it for a short period of time, we likely would need to go to working with a local bank and doing more of a placement.
So you don't get the bids that you're normally looking for.
I can't guarantee that,
Yeah.
but that is a risk.
I mean-
you know, we do believe that on a competitive basis, it's open to everybody, and with a competitive sale, you
get better bid.
You get better
Yeah.
bids, or you know that you're getting the lower bid versus
Yeah.
working individually. But again, that can be
Mm-hmm.
ultimately a policy decision, and if that was the direction we were given, we could work with that.
Yeah.
But if we take it to the market and do a competitive sale, we take them this morning, and they'll be looking to find out if it was awarded
Tomorrow morning.
afternoon, or
Yeah.
tomorrow morning by
Yeah.
8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because they then want to make sure that they can go out and market and sell it.
Right. And they, too, are looking at fluctuating interest rates and so on, so they don't want to hold that money. It's $1.2 million.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I get that. I guess the part that I think probably is, I get the whole, the market, the rates change, minute by minute, but the coupon, the decision on that structure, I believe that decision's made prior to that. Is that correct?
On
Setting the coupon rate? I mean, I get that the actual overall interest rate is set, at the time of bid, but the coupon structure of the maturities here, the 5% and the 4% on the farther out.
we don't receive the coupon until this morning at 10 o'clock when we take bids.
So that's part of the bid?
Yes, that is part of the bid process. We do structure how we anticipate the principal payments to be laid out, and that is published in the official statement. There is some ability to move those around, and you can see that they were changed a little bit from the official statement to keep them level payments, and because of the reduction in reduction in bond size of about 220. But the coupons that is the piece of information we get from the underwriters this morning.
I mean, I understand, Mr. Molitor, what you're saying in terms of future councils, but if we're looking at it in today's dollars and in future dollars, the bottom line is the $86,888.
Well, I get that. I mean, what we're doing is we're paying a higher rate on a lower principal amount to get that.
Right.
And whenever we look at refinancings, what do we always look at? We look at the rate.
Right.
And so my point being is that, and I get why the Baird structures it this way. It's a lot easier to sell a coupon bond at 5%
Sure.
than
Than
it is
one-
at 2% or 1%,
yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
it is. But it just, I think it's important, probably most important for Brian in this case, because he'll be here presumably on since after this council's gone, for the next council and future councils, to make sure that we don't look at this in just the vacuum of rates. So I think everyone gets focused on this whole rate. We're getting our discount here, not on the rate. We're getting it on the amount of principal that we're paying it on. So I just want to make sure that I think we get these things thrown at us quite a bit about, we can save money on the rates. Well, it's not just.
We're saving money, but not on the rate.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. Good comments and good discussion. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further questions or discussion? Then hearing none.
I don't think we got a second.
Yep, I seconded it. Yep. Ms. Mortenson made that, and I seconded that. So any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And good discussion. Thank you for those comments. So next, we're going to move on to approve a conditional offer of employment to Kevin Walsh for the Community Service CSO officer position.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The council is being asked to approve a conditional offer of employment for Mr. Kevin Walsh as our community service officer. This process to hire a community service officer, as you're aware, was due to a vacancy that has come with that community service officer position. Advertising for the CSO position closed on September 16th. We had 7 applicants. 6 applicants were invited to interview. 2 candidates were invited for final interviews, with one of those candidates withdrawing his name between the last council meeting when I talked about these 2 candidates and this council meeting. So Mr. Kevin Walsh emerged as a candidate hire due to his experience. And in the packet, I did list some of his most relevant experience. First of which, the last 12 years, he's been a reserve volunteer officer with the city of Minnetrista. 10 of those years, he was the reserve sergeant with Minnetrista. He spent 3 years as a CSO in Orono. This was quite a few years ago, before his current position. He is currently self-employed. And then he completed his Hennepin County Reserve schooling, as well as 1 year of law enforcement training education. So as noted in the packet, it was pending a successful pre-employment physical and drug screening. Those have both been completed and are successful. We did check his driving record and his criminal history. Both of those came back today clear as well. And we're here before the City Council to approve a conditional offer. The terms for his employment are listed on the attached conditional offer letter. The rate at which is listed is the intro rate to our CSO position. So that's where we have that position slated to start. And we will and do continuously have a reserve posting as well, because with this, it would open another reserve position, and we do have a continuous posting for our reserves as well. So with that being said, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions, Council? Pleased that we were able to find somebody so quickly. I know in the past we've, so that's great. All right.
So this is on behalf of the Personnel Committee, and we recommend adopting this resolution approving a conditional offer of employment for Mr. Kevin Walsh as a community service officer with the City of Minnetrista. We do have an expected start date here in the beginning of November. As I mentioned, he is self-employed. We'll be leaving that to work with us then full-time, so we'll work on his start date here shortly, pending approval by the council.
And then the one thing that I'd like to add is that we did not pursue this with the Personnel Committee in our traditional face-to-face meeting process, because this is kind of an easy one, and because he was going to be hired at the starting rate. I was able to meet with Mayor Whalen face-to-face last week to just discuss the agenda, and including this, and I was able to contact Councilmember Mortenson by telephone. Tabor was on vacation last week and wasn't here. Also talked with Mr. Grimm. So long story short, we were able to do this in a couple different ways instead of having one big meeting. So I think if it was a little bit more complicated hire, we would have held out to do a meeting, but because this was not, we chose that route. So,
all right. Thank you for adding that.
Any other questions? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve the conditional offer of employment to Kevin Walsh for the Community Service Officer position?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Molitor made that motion, and Ms. Bruce seconded. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. So that concludes our business items. We'll move on to our administrative items. Staff reports, Mr. Barone.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a few things to talk about. I'm going to start off with our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight on November 4th. The second item I have is one related to RAM construction and the topic of liquidated damages. We've had a number of conversations between city staff here, Ms. Fauske, and also the attorneys for Kennedy and Graven, Mr. Strumman and also Mr. Batty. We're in the process of finalizing a letter, and one of the things we discussed in our last, I think it was a telephone conference call, was that we had heard through Ms. Fauske that Ram was kind of going back and looking at some things and was probably going to be sending us like another quote bill or for something. I don't know what it was. But the recommendation from the attorneys was, let's wait for them to send us the next bill kind of thing, and then be able to reply to them with this letter that talks about now we're pursuing liquidated damages versus just sending them the letter when they really weren't asking for any additional money. We had all along over the last few years have been working as best we can with RAM to pare the list down to some small number of things. We finally got it down to a very small number of things, 2 items, I believe, that were essentially, quote, punch list kind of items. And so that occurred recently. So they were getting the sense that we were wrapping this up, and they started looking through their books. And so they sent Ms. Fauske a letter. Was it late last week or early this week? Or?
Madam Mayor, if I may, so to clarify with what Mr. Barone was explaining, RAM did send an email with a disputed or question about looking into a quantity for tree removal, so work that was done 2 years ago. So we're certainly seeing them going through some bookkeeping on their end. At this point, we asked for supporting documentation for that request and have yet to see that. So the pay item in question here at this point has to do with some street signage quantities that we worked through with RAM Contracting a few weeks ago with regards to looking at some invoices and what was out there. So that's the item that they're requesting payment for, which sparked this conversation, as Mr. Barone indicated.
So we're about set to send them the letter. Once that gets sent, we'll send a copy to the city council so you can see the actual letter, and then I guess the fund begins with them on that. So all the terms and conditions with the liquidated damages have been pinned down. Exact dates have been pinned down. We've got final numbers. Again, we'll share that letter with you once we ship it off, but I believe that email came in recently from RAM, so we're ready to reply to them with that letter. And so, like I said, now the fun will begin.
All right.
Any questions about that? I got one final item. So the last item I have has to do with Woodland Cove. As the council may or may not know, we have a master development agreement with them that started in 2012, and it's a 10-year agreement. It should, which means it's scheduled to expire in April of 2022. M&I Homes has recently entered into a contingent purchase agreement on the remaining residential phases in the southeast portion of the development property, which is 152 acres or 415 more residential lots with Woodland Cove. And both Woodland Cove and M&I have reached out to the city about extending the master development agreement until April of 2029. That would add an additional 7 years, or be 10 years from today. So they're going through their due diligence, and if that transaction does occur, it would probably happen before the end of this calendar year. And so we've are in the process now of talking with them, and so you may see this come up again a little later in this calendar year, one of the remaining, I believe, 3 council meetings. And so there's a lot of things to look at, but for them, but we have to obviously be able to bring that back to the council and have it be acceptable to you. So we're going to be in the process of trying to look at kind of all aspects of that master development agreement, and then have something for you that we hope will be enough for you to approve it. So.
Okay. All right. We'll see that in the future.
So it doesn't sound like they're simply assuming the agreement.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
They're not just taking possession of the agreement as is. I mean,
so in other words, we're not just taking out
the date.
Carlson and plugging in M&I.
It's kind of a renegotiation of all of it, not just taking a.
Well, that's kind of what we're working through.
Right.
There's items, obviously, that you have council brought up here recently with road thickness.
Mm-hmm.
This is for one example. So there's things we're going through the agreement and revisiting with them, things that are relevant and have been recently discussed and what's been updated per our standards. But there's a lot of things that likely might not change. But there's things that we are going through and having those discussions with them to see how that can work into the deal. And that, of course, has a large effect on them, M&I, and the group, and all the moving parts that go with this. So, yeah, that's what we're working with them on.
So we're aware of the issues that have been raised at the council level in the last few years about things that could impact the M&I if they do purchase this from this Woodland Cove project. So we're trying to make sure we do our due diligence, so to speak, as they work together. And so.
Yep. So, and that'll come back.
Yep.
So. All right. Anything else?
No, that's it. I don't know if David has one thing.
I do, Madam Mayor and Council. I just have a quick update regarding our comprehensive plan changes that we talked about at our last meeting. The good news is almost all of the changes are considered minor and can be done administratively. There is one of the changes, though, that I'm actually looking for some feedback from council on, and that has to do with the 2017 CIP parks language. Because it triggers their rules, because it's a CIP and it involves the parks, if we want to change that, we need to kick this back through the process, basically go back to the Planning Commission, hold a public hearing. Because it's parks, we probably, rightfully so, have to go back to the Parks Commission, and run it through them, then Planning Commission with a public hearing, then ultimately Council, and then this would have to be then resubmitted to the Met Council to go through their approval process. It cannot be done administratively. So I guess
could they simply change that to go from 2017 to 2019? Then it's a little more updated.
No.
So it has to stay with the 2017.
You either stay with the 2017, which again is meaningless, or we go through that process. So I'm looking for direction from council on what you'd like to do with that.
Because I brought it up, I don't have a problem with leaving it the way it is. It's irrelevant, and it shouldn't be in there, but it's in there, and it's not going to hurt anything.
It's not going to change anything.
Yeah, that's the issue.
If it wasn't leave it as 2017.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yep. All right. Anything else from staff?
Madam Mayor, if I may, included for distribution here to the council, just for information, I'll provide one to the city clerk as well. Based on recommendation from council at our last meeting with regards to the Halstead project, this letter has been distributed to residents along Halstead prior to the proposed mill and overlay projects. Allowing them the opportunity to go and make that connection to the city water, but prior to the project, so we can get that process going and provide folks with an opportunity to make a connection before the project, and then also outlay that there would be a period of time that they would not be able to make a connection. So, wanted to provide that to the council in case you get some phone calls from some folks.
Okay, great, thank you.
So this is dated today, but it actually won't go out until tomorrow.
I can check.
Or it hasn't gone out yet, I guess is my point.
It was to go out today, correct?
So it's already in the mail or in the email, I guess mail.
I believe it was distributed this morning. We were tracking this on Friday to be mailed out today.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Staff reports. We'll start with Ms. Bruce.
I just have the Mound Fire Commission meeting coming up on November 20th and the 21st, the St. Bonnie Fire meeting.
Okay.
Two items. The regular Pioneer Sarah Creek meeting was last Thursday. At that meeting, we unanimously approved Hawkinson Anderson as our technical advisor starting January next year.
Okay.
And also, starting January, we will start working on our 4th gen plan.
I saw that, yeah.
And so we have Wink who will assist us on that, and evidently they assisted the commission on the 3rd gen plan. So we have the same person.
Okay, but isn't this just an update to the current plan? Because the current plan only was like for 5 years or 6 years or something, or 4 years?
Basically,
So
we're
it's-
calling it a fourth gen.
Oh,
plan,
okay.
so.
Will it be good for 10 years?
Yes.
Okay, all right, good. All right.
I understand there was a little bloodletting trying to do the third gen plan.
Yeah, okay. Hopefully it goes better. All right.
Oh, well, we have the same person from Wings, so that,
Okay.
at least for me,
Diane
should
Spector
give
is...
me a more comfort level.
Okay, all right.
The other thing is, I sit on the board of the Friends of West Tonka Library. We have 2 fundraisers during the year where we get the funds that we actually, for the local library, to do their own programs versus the main library system having the standard programs. So it's a spring and a fall book sale. The book sale is next Saturday from 9 to 4:30, and on Monday from 12 to 7. Books are $1. Hard copies are $1. Paperbacks are 50 cents. So, I mean, it's a good deal if you're still into books. And if anybody has books they want to donate, we take them all this week. So,
All right, great.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Good community event. All right. Mr. Molitor?
LMCD attended the meeting last week. It was a main item for some of you that may be aware, the Caribbean is a marina and restaurant on the lake that's now under new ownership, and they are planning a reconfiguration of their dock structure. That began as a public hearing at the previous meeting, which was continued to the meeting that we just got done last week that went for a couple of hours, and we'll now have another continuance of that public meeting hearing to the next meeting, which is this coming Wednesday. There's quite a few moving parts to that, and so that's a big consumption of time for the LMCD right now. I'm not sure if we will arrive at a conclusion at this meeting or not, but that's a big focus right now.
Okay. The WCC meeting for October was canceled, so we will not have one. And I was part of the phone call to discuss Kevin Walsh's conditional offer of employment with Mike Barone. And that's it.
Okay. So the highlight of my week last week was being at the high school for a full day. Saw many of you there, and was able to participate in the mayor's roundtable discussion, and it was a lot of fun. Very fun to meet the young people and also talk about city government. And I'll be attending the regional meeting for the LMC. Just a reminder, it's on the 14th. If anybody else would like to attend, let Cassandra know so she can sign you up. And I'll be attending. I attended the Personnel Committee meeting, as Mr. Barone stated, and I'm sure there's some other things too. So with that, we are concluded. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I thought we'd sit here for a while. So Ms. Mortenson made that motion, and Mr. Molitor seconded. All those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes 5-0.